March 31st, 1995 did not begin with chaos, fear, or any visible warning that something tragic was about to unfold. Instead, it started like a normal day in the life of a young woman whose career was moving at an incredible pace, as Selena Quintanilla woke up surrounded by the responsibilities, expectations, and opportunities that had become part of her everyday life, carrying with her the same sense of focus and determination that had helped her rise from small performances to becoming one of the most influential voices in Latin music. And what makes this day so difficult to understand even decades later is that there was no clear signal at the beginning that anything was wrong, no moment that stood out as unusual, and no indication that the events about to take place would lead to one of the most heartbreaking losses in music history. Because as the hours passed, what began as a routine effort to resolve a business issue slowly turned into a situation that escalated beyond control, leaving millions of fans around the world in shock, disbelief, and emotional pain. And 31 years later, people continue to revisit that day, not only because of the tragedy itself, but because of how quickly everything changed, forcing a deeper look into the relationships, decisions, and circumstances that surrounded Selena's final hours, and raising questions about how something that started so ordinarily could end so devastatingly. In the months leading up to that day, Selena Quintanilla was experiencing a level of success that placed her on the edge of global recognition, as her career had moved beyond regional popularity and into a space where she was influencing audiences across cultures, building a reputation that combined talent, authenticity, and a powerful connection with her fans. And what made this period so important was not just what she had already achieved, but what was about to happen next, because her transition into the English language market was expected to introduce her to a wider international audience, positioning her as an artist capable of crossing boundaries and redefining how Latin music was experienced on a global scale, while at the same time she was expanding her influence through her business ventures, including her boutiques, which reflected her creativity and ambition and demonstrated that she was thinking beyond music, building something that could sustain her legacy long into the future. And everything about her life suggested forward movement, growth, and opportunity. Yet beneath that progress, there were complications forming that would soon interrupt the path she was on, showing that even at the height of success, challenges can develop quietly in the background. As Selena's career continued to grow, the structure supporting it became more complex, requiring a network of individuals who were entrusted with important responsibilities. And within that structure, trust played a central role, particularly in the relationships that involved managing her business operations, including the fan club and boutique activities overseen by Yolanda Saldivar, who had been given significant access and authority within Selena's organization. And while this trust initially appeared to be justified, concerns began to emerge over time as inconsistencies in financial records and missing documentation raised questions that could not be easily dismissed, creating a situation where what might have started as minor irregularities gradually developed into something more serious, because in a growing business environment, details matter, and when those details begin to show patterns of concern, they require attention. And Selena, who had worked tirelessly to build her career and reputation, understood that these issues could not be ignored, recognizing that protecting what she had created meant addressing problems directly, even when those problems involved people she had trusted. And as the concerns became more pressing, the decision was made to confront the situation in person in order to obtain clarity and retrieve important records. On the morning of March 31st, Selena approached the day with the intention of resolving a situation that had been building over time. As she prepared to meet Yolanda Saldivar at a motel in Corpus Christi, Texas, viewing the meeting as a necessary step toward clearing up the issues that had been affecting her business operations. And from her perspective, this was not about conflict, but about resolution, as she needed answers, documentation, and a sense of closure that would allow her to move forward without uncertainty. And what stands out about this moment is how ordinary it must have felt, because there was no visible sign that the situation would escalate beyond a difficult conversation, and no indication that this meeting would become the defining moment of her life. Yet within that ordinary setting, the conditions were in place for something far more serious to unfold, showing how quickly circumstances can shift when tension and unresolved issues come together. As the meeting began, the conversation focused on the concerns that had brought Selena there, including the need to obtain records and understand what had been happening behind the scenes. And while the discussion may have started with the intention of resolving these issues, the presence of tension created an environment where emotions began to influence the direction of the interaction, because conversations involving trust, accountability, and pressure often carry a level of intensity that can make them unpredictable. And as the discussion continued, the atmosphere shifted, moving away from a structured exchange of information and toward a more emotionally charged confrontation, where the original purpose of the meeting became overshadowed by the dynamics between those involved, illustrating how quickly a situation can move beyond its intended outcome when control begins to slip. During that escalating moment, the situation took a sudden and irreversible turn when Yolanda Saldivar produced a firearm, and as Selena attempted to leave the room in an effort to remove herself from the confrontation, she was shot, transforming what had been a business meeting into a life-threatening crisis within seconds. And what makes this moment particularly powerful is not only the suddenness of the act, but the response that followed, as Selena, despite being critically injured, managed to leave the room and move toward the motel lobby, seeking help and identifying who was responsible, demonstrating a level of awareness and strength even under extreme circumstances. And emergency responders were contacted immediately, with efforts focused on providing assistance as quickly as possible in a situation where time became the most critical factor. Following the incident, Selena was transported to a nearby hospital where medical teams worked urgently to save her life, as every effort was made to stabilize her condition and address the severity of her injuries. And moments like these are defined by urgency, hope, and the determination to change the outcome, with each second carrying weight and each action driven by the possibility that the situation can still be turned around. Yet despite these efforts, the injuries she sustained were too severe, and later that day, Selena Quintanilla passed away, marking the end of a life that had been filled with promise, potential, and a future that had only just begun to unfold, while Yolanda Saldivar was later arrested, charged, and convicted, receiving a life sentence, bringing a legal conclusion to a situation that would continue to carry emotional impact far beyond the courtroom. As news of Selena's passing spread, the reaction was immediate and widespread, beginning with confusion as details were still emerging and quickly turning into shock and heartbreak as the reality became clear, and fans across the world struggled to process the loss, gathering to share memories, play her music, and find ways to cope with the emotional impact of losing someone who had meant so much to them, because Selena was not just an artist, but a symbol of culture, identity, and connection, representing a bridge between communities and a voice that resonated with people from different backgrounds. And the response to her passing reflected the depth of that impact, as tributes poured in and her influence became even more visible in the way people came together to honor her memory. 31 years later, Selena's story continues to raise questions about the events that led up to that day, as people reflect on the warning signs, the decisions, and the moments that might have unfolded differently, not as a way of assigning blame, but as part of a natural process of trying to understand how something so tragic could occur. Because when a life filled with so much promise is lost, there is a desire to make sense of it, to examine the details, and to consider whether anything could have changed the outcome. And these reflections highlight the emotional depth of her story, showing that it is not only about what happened, but about what could have been. Despite the tragedy of her final day, Selena's legacy has continued to grow, reaching new generations and maintaining a presence that extends far beyond the time in which she lived. As her music continues to inspire, her story continues to resonate, and her influence can be seen in the artists who followed her path, demonstrating that her impact did not end with her life, but instead became something that continues to evolve. And what makes her legacy so powerful is the combination of talent, authenticity, and cultural significance that she brought to everything she did, creating a connection that remains strong even decades later. Selena Quintanilla's final day is remembered not only because of the tragedy itself, but because of what it represents, showing how quickly life can change while also demonstrating how deeply a person's impact can endure. And 31 years later, her voice still echoes, her influence is still felt, and her story continues to matter, reminding us that while moments can end, legacy continues, and the connection she created with her audience remains as strong as ever, proving that even in loss, there can be something lasting and meaningful that continues to grow over time. If Selena's story touched you, share your thoughts below and let others know what her legacy means to you. And for more powerful stories that explore music, culture, and global impact, subscribe to Global Vibes TV because some stories never fade. They continue to grow stronger with time.